Hello, my name is Ilona. Today is Tuesday, September 19th, 2023, and it is Prinsjesdag here in the Netherlands. And that's Princess Day. And that actually means that the king will, how do you say this, is going to give a talk, and this is about the parliament, and they're going to bring out their budgets and talk about financial things, and it's really, to me, a very dull day. I was aware of it, but I don't really care about it. I did some cards on it last week on a Tuesday, and it seemed like the same old thing, but there's not going to be very much enthusiasm. It felt like it was really going to be the last time that this was going to happen. You know, the government is getting together, and then the king, riding around in this golden carriage and things like that. It's very the opening of the new year, so to speak, I think, the financial and things like that. So we'll just have to wait and see what's going to happen, but I don't think anything interesting is going to happen, really anything interesting. So that's today. In this video, I want to talk about patterns. And I read an article yesterday in the Dutch media. It's a Dutch newspaper, AD, and it was talking about the circle of physical things happening to children. And I'm really talking about hitting and awful things. I'm not talking about the other physical things that are also happening. But in this article, it was basically talking about children growing up in a family where there is physical things happening. They will most likely be like that themselves. They will be repeating, not everyone, but most of them will be repeating this cycle. And this has to do with patterns. And it's sometimes very difficult to explain, especially when you're like an outsider. You're like, how is this possible? Why is someone remaining in a relationship when they, their partner is doing physical things, hurting them? They have children. Why is he or she remaining in that? And it's very tough, especially when you weren't brought up in that way. I wasn't, so for me it's very strange to see. And this has to do with patterns. This says when you grow up, you the way your parents act towards you, somewhere as a child you think it's normal because your parents are doing it. This is what your normal is. So when you grow up, when physical things happen, you think this is normal. And even though later on you see something's wrong, and you can even be consciously aware of it, maybe you even go to therapy, do some things with it. But if you don't heal the energy behind it, you will keep creating that. Even if you are fully aware this isn't right, should not be happening, it's possible that you'll be attracting relationships where these things happen. Or you can sometimes, in a fit of rage or anything else, with your children, you can act the same way. Because a lot of our things are in our unconscious and our subconscious. And these are patterns we've, taken in as a child. And really, you're like a sponge. So you don't question it. And so it's normal for you, whether you like it or not. You think that this is normal behavior. So you're like, okay, even when you rationally know this is not normal, it's even with people with like addictions. A lot of them have also this dysfunctional family they come from. Most of them actually does. I don't think when you're in a real happy family, you are going to have addiction or addictive personality or things like that. It has to do with traumas you've been through, things you've experienced. And even if you're fully aware, you can still not get away from that because it has to do with the energy behind it. It has to do with healing the pain from the child inside of you, connecting with your inner child, but also with your inner teenager, because in those years, they are forming years as well. You can take in a lot as well. So it's very important to heal that as well. So with patterns, it's very difficult to get away with it if you don't start healing this. So if you are in a situation or you know people that are in this situation, first of all, it's very important that they get to safety. If that, of course, is If they're not safe, they need to be put in a safe situation as soon as possible. But they really need professional help, because this goes very deep. And it, of course, hurts themselves, or they can hurt other people. And unfortunately, not everyone is aware of this, or not. And most of the time, you do hear, like in this case, mostly, a lot of women have partners, men that hurt them like that. But it's also a different way around. Men with, women that hurt them. It's a smaller percentage, but it's still happening. Of course, other forms of partnership where one is more dominant than the other, or maybe has this inkling. It happens. So it's very tough situation, but because usually it's like a woman with a man that has some issues, the man usually is regretful later on, and as he treats in her mind, the children right. But if you could just read that article as well, unfortunately it is in Dutch, but you could translate it, I think, with Google. It really speaks about the devastating effect on children. So if you are in that situation, get out. You need to get out as soon as possible, because it will affect your children. Or they're going to act that same way, or they're going to turn inward, depressed, hurt themselves because they don't know how to handle all this. So it's very important. You want to heal this. You need to look at the energy behind this. You need to connect with the child you once, you were, and was completely neglected and put out in the cold, so to speak, emotionally and also physically, because that's what they were talking about in this article, the circle of physical things happening to children. It has a devastating effect on their self-confidence, on their way of looking at things. They build up anger, build up sadness. It's just devastating for everyone involved, and the pattern will continue if you don't work the energy behind this. I even find out, myself, and so I'm in my process as well. I talk about that, of course, in my videos, and I'm still stuck on a certain thing that just keeps coming back. I've grown a lot. I've seen a lot, healed a lot, but I really noticed that we are really in the time now that certain things that are so tough to deal with are now just keep popping up, keep coming up. And I really need to deal with this, but sometimes it's very difficult because it's such an unconscious level to really fully feel through that. That's why it's important also, if you are in this situation and you just can't get a grip and it's really hurting you or hurting people around you, then of course you need to get professional help. But they go very, very deep. And especially if you're an outsider and you were brought up in a different way. I was not brought up with this physical in my growing up. I was in an unsafe environment because of other things, and that had to do with more emotional things. Also something else, I don't want to talk about that right now, maybe in a future video, but not like hitting or anything like that. I wasn't used to that. So to me, and I've mentioned this, I left my home very young age. I was 15, so I started living in like this group home. It was more there were people taking care of us in a certain way, but it wasn't like a family, but it was like a group home. So we had like a maximum of 10 teenagers that could live together, and then there were people every day would come in and be there, and then they would have changed. Those were like the it wasn't like a family thing. It was more of a group home I was living in. And there was a young woman, of course. I was 15 myself. I think she was 16. She was about my age. Very assertive, very strong, didn't accept anything, didn't tolerate anything. But when it came to men, her boyfriends, she was used to being hit by her father, literally physical. And that would happen also with the boyfriend she was with. It was just fascinating in a way. See, to me, it was almost, well, it's not, it was in a way like impossible to understand. When I look back on it, I understand it now. But of course, I was 15, 16. I was like, why are you tolerating this? You're not tolerating anything. if anyone else was saying something about her, and she was also very strong, she didn't tolerate anything, but with the men she would just accept it. She would just be very subservient, because that's what she was used to with her father. She didn't have any connection with her mother anymore, but her father she put on a pedestal, because that was the only one she still had from her family. So in her mind, he couldn't do anything about that. It was because of her mother that was awful, and that's why he started drinking and doing all these things. So she couldn't look at the pain that he caused her, and in a way still was causing her, because he was keep connecting with these boyfriends like her father, doing the same thing as her father was doing. And it's very difficult. Let's face it, I was 15, 16, what did I know then? I didn't understand that at all. I was like, how is this even possible? You're so strong. And in other things, she would speak out, she would just say her thing, but with the men, she was just like turning backwards into this little child or something, into what she was used to. And these are the patterns that can have an effect. That's why, like I mentioned before, myself, I'm working with things and I'm like, I know this already. Why isn't this healed yet? And sometimes it just goes so deep. So it's important to understand that with these patterns, sometimes it can really look very strange for an outsider. If you haven't experienced that yet, that it's very difficult to deal with. But if people are in these situations, they really need professional help. If they don't want the help, or they remain in that, then it will be up to you if you still want to help them or not, or just step away, because they will remain as long as they don't want to change that, if they don't want to heal that. And unfortunately, there is nothing you can do about that. That is very painful to see as well. It's like with all these patterns that people have, some people will defend them. Even, I was talking about like a woman with a man, and the man is very physical in a way, in a dreadful way, that she could even defend the man if someone else gets involved. It's like they're protecting their family, they're protecting their father, they're protecting their mother, they're protecting that family, like, well, that's the only thing I have. It's deep down, that child is like, well, this is the only thing I have. If I don't have my parents, if I have to see my parents as humans that made huge mistakes, that would be too painful for me, and that I really don't know what love is. That's too much for them to realize how painful that is, and that will hurt. I've mentioned this before. If you want to work with healing your inner child and your inner teenager, you will hit that rock bottom where you're like, so I can't expect anything from my parents in that energetically, or that I'm going to be loved by someone else, or that someone is finally going to understand me or see me. You will have to hit that rock bottom, realizing, no, you're not going to get that outside of yourself. You have to find it inside yourself. You have to become your own parent. And that is a very tough realization. It's a very cold realization. But when you go through that pain, you will start to realize that you can become your own parent. You can give yourself what you need, and then everything changes. Because if you change that energy, you will not experience those situations anymore. I also got a question from someone. Well, if all the dark energies and the puppets are gone, what are we going to do with awful people? With people who are bullies and people who are, hurting other people? What are we going to do then in the new world? Well, the energies are changing. You can feel the energies changing. And by raising the vibrations, things will be triggered. I notice it myself. I just keep getting triggered in certain things. There's not much to hide anymore. And especially when you're working consciously with it, you can use it to heal. And it's very important to understand that there are going to be people who do not want to look at themselves, who do not want to work with themselves, who just, remain in their own energies. And when they have a very low frequency, you won't meet them anymore because they won't fit your frequency. It's like the separation happening. And I also want to mention that if you're working with yourself, you don't have to be completely healed. You don't have to be afraid that you're going to miss the train, plane, or whatever to this new world if you're not fully healed. If you're working with yourself, you're conscious of yourself, just working through things, that's enough. You know, you don't have to be this perfect, completely healed spiritual being already to join the new world or the new energies. But it's about focusing on your frequency, because that will decide where you're going to end up in the timelines. The other people, the people with very low frequencies, they're not going to be in that same timeline with you. Because if you change your energy, if you heal these patterns that you may still carry with you, and it doesn't necessarily have to be what I'm talking about in this video, but other patterns, you change that, you heal that, you're not going to draw in and attract those situations anymore, those people anymore. So you're not going to attract bullies if it's not in your energy anymore. If you're in your power, you're not going to attract those people. So you don't have to be afraid of that anymore. And that's why it's so important to focus on your own energy, because if you change that, you'll change everything. And you don't have to be afraid of certain situations. If that's why the beauty is, if you're, of course, already working with it, and a lot of people are, you can already see your life change. I can see my life change. Although I am stuck on a certain thing that I really need to get through, and it's not that easy. And I think we all have that. The real deep wounds, hurts are now coming up. It's an opportunity to heal. And sometimes it just takes time, and you need to be patient with yourself and, mild towards all the things that you've been through, all the things maybe you've done. Sometimes I think back at certain situations. I'm like, oh, why did I do that? Why did I act like that? But, it's also about forgiving yourself for the things you've done. Very important. Be loving towards yourself, support yourself as much as possible, and also give yourself some, just some credit for all the things you've done, and trying to become aware of who you are. You don't have to fix it right away. You don't have to be healed immediately. It's a process, and you're walking that process, and you should be very proud of yourself and the steps that you make. So I'd like to leave it at this, and I hope to see you in another video. Bye.